And we are live. Hey people, how are you doing? Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of RunChatLive.com. And as always, this episode is being recorded live at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel and Facebook page. So yeah, it's a new month, a new dawn. And with that, we're bringing a new focus. And this month, as you will have seen advertised on the Sports Therapy Association podcast, the focus is on women's health. We've got an amazing, if I say so myself, an amazing 4-part series of women's health focused episodes lined up for you this month, including special guests Christine Bird and Joe McEwen from Menopause Movement, Dr. Gemma Parry from the English Institute of Sports, and Michelle Lyons at Celebrate Celebrity. And tonight, in part 1 of this focus on women's health, we are delighted to be joined by special guest Siobhan O'Donovan, aka the Booby Physio, who caused a storm of interest at last year's Therapy Expo with her presentation about the impact that breast weight management can have on the physical, psychological, and social health of women and girls. So if you have joined us live, do feel free, as always, to ask questions in the comments section. If you listen to the podcast, and that's one of the many bonuses of joining us live, is you can interact on the screen. If you come in here and leave a little question, I can bring you up on the screen like I'm doing so at the moment. Nikki Mansfield says, "Evening, everybody." See what I did there? Oh, here we go. Evening, every booby. It started. Thank you for that, Nikki. Really looking forward to this. A subject I can honestly say I've never really given much thought about. And I own a pair. Good, Nikki setting the tone for tonight wonderfully there. Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, so you can have your photo up there, people. If you want to join us, you can have share where you are and that sort of stuff. Brian Huxley is in the house as well, saying hello, everybody. Cecily Hislop says, get on, my beauties. A lot of kind of diversity and different dialects happening tonight, which is wonderful to see as always. And Tracy Marshall says, evening or welcome. So as always, I really do thank you guys for joining us live. And people are still coming through the door. And the feedback we get constantly is, thanks for doing it live. Even though I can't join, it's really nice just to hear this is happening on the spot instead of kind of edited and put together. So anything can happen. And Gary Benson as well, founder of the STA, is in the house tonight. We'll be sharing important links and things probably in the comments section if you should need them. Hey, Gary, thanks for joining us. Right then, I think that's everything in place. So without further ado, I shall bring our guest up. Like I say, questions as much as you can, people. That's why you're here. Let's start episode 227, Avoiding the Booby Traps of Breast Weight Management, with special guest Siobhan O'Donovan. Hey, Siobhan, how you doing?
Hey, Matt, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love every booby. I like that. I'll be Nikki, if it's okay. I'll be stealing that and using that again.
Yes. I think in the interaction we've had so far organising tonight, then there's been, shall I say, maybe 2 puns, maybe a few more than that. So we're looking forward to that. And people, you're welcome to join in the comment section. Great. So thank you so much for giving us the time and kicking off this 4-episode special on women's health with such an important topic, which obviously we're very excited to get into shortly. Just to let people know, where are you in the world? Talking of different dialects.
So I'm in West Cork, right down at the very bottom of the southwest coast of Ireland, where we have a bit of microclimate sometimes and a bit of madness sometimes. So we had the mad storm and then raging sunshine the day after it. It was literally the calm after it. So yeah, that's where I am. But I'm, thanks to the wonders of the internet, I am worldwide with what I do, really. So a lot of my work now is done with therapists and patients literally worldwide, which is great. I do see some patients face to face, and they have to come to see me here, or I have the best waiting room in the world, by the way. It's looking out on the water, or I see them in Cork City. I'm about 50 minutes from Cork City.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Nikki.
And obviously I mentioned in the intro you made it to Therapy Expo. Was that the first time you've been at Therapy Expo?
Yes.
Last November?
Yes.
Great. We were talking briefly about that off air. It seems like such a long time ago now, but we were talking about how it's so nice to see multidisciplinary and people mixing together, and so you noticed that as well. And you've probably been to a lot of places and you've got a long history in it, so it's good to see for you, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. It just felt like a really nice community, with just lots of I thought there was a really good feel-good vibe there, so I really liked that.
They would like to hear that. Right then, so I guess my first question should be, and my first question will be, how does a former Irish international scrum half become the Booby Physio? Was that always the plan? When people said, "What do you want to be when you were a little girl growing up?" What did you say?
I don't think I ever said I want to be the Booby Physio. I mean, I will check with siblings, but no, I don't think that was on the radar. That kind of all happened a bit. You know how life opens doors and different doors take you different places. So basically, I was always very active as a youth, long time ago, as we've already discussed, Matt. I decided, because we literally were talking about the 80s when I was looking at what profession I wanted to get into, and I knew I wanted to work within sport and activity. I had never come across a therapy profession. It had just never happened within our family that anybody had ever needed. Like, there was doctors, nurses, but that was probably about it, really, dentists. And I didn't have a desire to go into any of those kind of areas. Didn't really want to be hospital based, but I did want to work within the sports and activity environment. So basically, the only thing open, and again, there's an interesting thing with the gender equity whole kind of side of it as well. But the only thing open to me was becoming a PE teacher, which was grand, actually, because I loved teaching, and I always have loved teaching. And like, I used to play 𝐒𝐫𝐽, which is a legalized form of violence that we have over here, where basically you take a stick that looks kind of like a hockey stick, but with a flat bit, and you can hit the ball in the air, and anybody else that gets in the way is just, kind of unfortunate. What's the consequence? No, that's not it. It's the fastest field game in the world. It's brilliant. Loved it. It was a really important part of my life.
I saw that game. Sorry to interrupt, but thank you for that. Are you watching Bad Sisters at the moment?
No, but I need to.
Well, there we go, because that game was on it, and I was trying to remember the name of the sport on it, and she's watching her daughter, and that was the game. Sorry.
So in the female game is called 𝐒𝐫𝐽, and the male game is called hurling. And here's an interesting aside. Hurling was 15 aside. When I was playing, 𝐒𝐫𝐽 was 12 aside, or 11, 12. But we played on the same bloody pitch, so we had to run further than they had to do. Typical. Anyway, now it's 15 aside. But anyway, I played. So I used to coach like the 𝐒𝐫𝐽, the junior side. So I knew that teaching was something that I was kind of keen on, and went and did that. And in my third of a 4-year degree, we were introduced to exercise physiology, how the body works, and sports injuries. And I was like, ooh. And I was really interested in the fact that I now was going to have responsibility for kids whom I could give exercises to that might maybe not be great for them, but they were all going to believe me. And that really actually came to be when I got my I got a job in London. So I did my penance in London. I taught in London for a year. Loved it, absolutely loved it. But one of my colleagues went off on a training course, and she came back. She said, everything we do in our warm-up is contraindicated. And we were all like, what is this word, contraindicated? So like, we had to look it up because it was a new word. But basically, there were exercises that we were doing that once sports science started as a field, and sport and exercise science, there was some analysis done of movement. And it was kind of like, oh, wonder whether that's such a good plan. Now, obviously, we've kind of come, not full circle, but we've come around to being able to see that movement is a good thing, and, not to get too hung up on too many form situations. But then equally, there is that balance. And I think one of the things that I've also come to, following the big long circle of where I've come to, is that we do need to have a bit of balance in life. I think sometimes you can go, the pendulum just swings too far, and I think there's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction sometimes to things. So it's like, you cannot move that way, you must not do that, as opposed to you can move any way you like. Let's find somewhere that there is a happy medium. But anyway, I got really interested in, while I was in London, I still wanted to kind of study more on the injury side, and very much about preventing exercise or preventing injury, because I really became very aware of my responsibility as a teacher, and I really became very aware of the fact that none of these exercises really had any science behind them or had any analysis. We were just teaching what somebody had taught us to teach. So anyway, I went off to the States and did my master's over there in health science with a focus on sports injury prevention and management. And there's a profession in the States, which I'm sure you're aware of, called certain athletic training. So the person who comes on the court at Wimbledon is a trainer. That is the very specific sports medicine profession over there. And that's what I did my master's in, and I did my professional qualification in that, and worked over there, got great experience in a large orthopedic sports medicine clinic there, where we had literally everything on site. Talk about spoiled. I had somebody who came to see me in the morning from the local university, and she was in surgery that afternoon. Like it was amazing, but very inspiring from the point of view of making sure that we were being interdisciplinary with our approach within multidisciplinary environments, so that was that. And then I came back to the UK, ran my own place in the UK for 14 and a half, 15 years in Lancashire, worked with lots of teams, and then came back over to Cork about 16 years ago, something like that. Was that what you asked me? Oh yeah. How did I end up becoming the Booby Physio? Sorry, I told you I do it. So basically when I came back, I'll answer my question now. When I came back, I had been very much focusing in the sports field myself. And then as I came back chose to be in Cork, which is the smaller of the two big cities in Ireland, knew that in doing that I was going to be going into an area where the sports market was probably reasonably saturated. So, but I was also finding myself talking to people more and more about the positions that they were sitting in, or the way they were moving, or what they were doing during their day, and how they were sleeping and things like that. And not how they were sleeping in terms of position, I should say, rather than the quality of their sleep at the time. And I just kind of felt I was actually, without any disrespect meant to anybody, I was having conversations with people where I was realizing that a lot of people were actually self-inflicting problems because of not having enough understanding of how their bodies worked, or what they needed to do to keep things mobile and so on. So I suppose that kind of brought me more into the posture road. And having those conversations, very much in the let's try and prevent you from having a problem. I do not want you back to see me with the same problem, because one of the two of us hasn't done our job right. And then the breast side of it happened purely by chance. When I'd been in Lancashire, Sunday supplements, Trini and Susanna, they had talked about, what women wear. They talked about the fact that they used to use a bra fitter in London. And I was in London for the proms with my mother-in-law. We had an hour and a half to kill. I was like, come on, let's go into one of these places and see what it's all about. And just absolutely life-changing. Walked out the door, an inch taller, felt like I was ready to take on the world. Would have gone up on stage at the Royal Albert Hall if they were short. I absolutely was. And the psychological bit of it was the bit that was really, I suppose, very obvious for me, because physically I was doing okay. I wasn't particularly in need of extension because I was doing a lot of weights because of the rugby. But suddenly it was like, oh my God, this is like I'm just gravity. Who are you? Like I've got you. I'm on top. And then that kind of made me go, well, if I'm feeling that way, how's that going to be for my patients? So I just started to look at it from the point of view of my patients. Then everybody who came in the door, I'm pulling on their bra strap going, that's wrong. That's wrong. And then the problem was I couldn't fix it. So I could tell them when they were in something that wasn't the right size. And that's where my statistic of 100% of women in the wrong bra started, and is still at 100% for everybody we've seen. But I kind of realized I don't know how to advise you now. I don't know. So I would send them off to be fitted, and then they'd come back in something that was just as bad in a lot of cases. Not everybody, but mostly. So I just didn't have anybody that I could rely on. And then I was kind of like, well, why am I relying on somebody else to do this? Why is my patient relying on somebody else to do this? This is something that we should learn how to do ourselves. It's not rocket science. I tend to page Dr. 𝐒𝐻𝐸m quite a lot because I'm very much into simple solutions, and it's not a very complex situation to know how to fit a bra on yourself. And if you do, then it changes a lot of things in your life in terms of your ability to withstand gravity. So I kind of went, okay, I'm going to learn how to do it, and then I'm going to teach people. And that's basically what we do.
And hence was born Posture Fitting. PostureFittingPhysio.com. Yeah.
And it was very important for me that we looked at more than just the bra. So like the idea with doing this as a therapy-based intervention is that we have internal support, which is what we can do ourselves through alignment, posture, whatever you want to call it. And then we have external support. And what happens is everybody relies on the external support, and that's in most cases poor. And there's very little recognition of the fact that actually there's a lot we can do internally to support breast weight, and that's where the posture side comes in, because breast weight is part of torso weight. And so if torso weight is in a constant flexed position, then gravity is winning and everything is being taken into that position. And then it just becomes so much harder to come back up away from that. And, you know, I did put my head above the parapet there at Therapy Expo, but also in the last, I suppose, couple of months talking to Jack Chu and so on, in that I do think the pendulum has swung too far with the whole posture conversation. And I think the fact that we have stopped talking to patients about it, we're losing sight of the fact that posture affects function.
Okay, let's put a pin in that, because I've got so many questions to ask you based on what you said so far, and I definitely want to come back to that posture thing, because I'd like, the same way as Jack did, kind of touched on as well. Definitely, I think I'm going to come from the same angle with that. But my first question, which I want to get an answer for, is, I mean, breasts have been around for quite a long time now, depending on what religion you are or how far you go back. Why is it that fitting is still an issue? Why are there these professionals who've been working for so long, and yet women are coming out of there, and as you say, they're coming to your clinic and you're going, what have they done? What are they giving you? Why is that going on, do you think?
Well, I think there's an element of, it is something that is not the same as the male physique, and therefore it's not being considered as something that's important or that has a role or that has a significance, aside from, you know, there are obviously sexualization roles. You know, there is breastfeeding, which is, you know, clearly a very functional role, but I don't think anybody has ever actually looked at the physical or the psychological or the social impact that unsupported or poorly supported breast weight has. So it's just never been on the radar. I mean, I didn't do anything about it in any of my education. I've yet to meet anybody in either their undergraduate or in postgraduate stuff afterwards who ever really, aside from conversations about breast cancer, which is absolutely as it should be, but outside of that, there are no conversations about it. It's just not something we study.
So the people doing the fitting, like whether it be Marks and Spencer's or Next or any other reputable high street that offers a breast kind of bra fitting service, what are they being taught? What are they basing this whole fitting thing on? Because it sounds like a great service and we encourage people to go along there, but from the sounds of it, what our listeners shouldn't be picking up is advise your clients to go to like a bra fitting service, because it could be. And
it depends is the answer, right? And that's and as soon as you're basing an answer on it depends. It depends on the training of the person. It depends on the environment that they're in. But the problem is, you cannot rely on it unless you've been and mystery shopped them and you know that you're happy with the service they're providing. But also they will only do the external side. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, because they don't have the knowledge to do the internal side. But the one of the problems, and one of the I have to be careful here, the large department stores that shall remain nameless, but that are really, really good at marketing bra fitting, started using a technique that began in the 40s, and a lot of the larger department stores used that for a long time. What you'll find is that the smaller independent lingerie stores tend to have better training because they're being trained by the brands, and there's been a move away from this technique whereby, you'll love this, you get a measuring tape, you put it around a person's girth, and then you add 4 inches to it. Like, why would you add 4 inches to a piece of clothing that you want to support your breasts? And 80% of the support comes from the band. So that girth needs to be snug and anchored to the body so that it's supporting the breasts. If it's 4 inches bigger, it's moving around. If it's moving around, your boobs are moving around. If your boobs are moving around, that's going to affect your performance, blah, blah, lots of other consequences. And unfortunately, the other side of that then is that you end up potentially looking, somebody sent me this picture of Beyonce today. I don't know whether you've seen it. I'm just going to put that up there to see, where's the camera? Is there. No, you can't really see it properly, but she has, the wires are sticking out of her dress.
All right.
It's not showing, is it? I'll send it to you. Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Wire, look at that wire poking right into her.
Yeah, I can see.
That's what happens when you wear a band that's too big. You end up with a cup that's too small. Why any stylist put her in that is beyond me. I'm going to have to put it down because it's upsetting me.
Beyonce does that to me as well. Yeah.
But what happens with, if the band is too big, the cup is going to be too small. And if there's a wire in the cup, then the cup is going to end up poking into breast tissue. And women then say they hate wired bras because they blame the wire for the fact that the wire is poking into their breast tissue. It's not the wire's fault. It's the fit. It's the fit of the bra. So then what happens is they move away from wired bras, which is where you're going to get extra support and extra shape. They go to wireless, which potentially, if it's still poorly fitted, you're really just covering yourself. You're really not getting any support at all, or you may not. Again, depending on the fit. So it's one of those things that has not evolved well over the years. It has remained that way. There's a lot of incorrect old wives' tales, or whatever you want to call them, about wired bras causing cancer, about the fact that you shouldn't wear a wired bra when you're pregnant or when you're breastfeeding. It's all about knowing how to fit it. If you're fitting it properly, it is sitting back on your ribs. It's nowhere near, it's around your breast tissue. It's not on your breast tissue. So it just comes down to lack of knowledge. And there's no environment in which girls are taught this information. So then the question becomes, is this something that they should be learning in school? Is this something that they should be learning at home? We know with people's home lives, there's no guarantee then that everybody is going to get that same information. So where is the responsibility for passing this information on? And I think as therapists, we have a really great opportunity, because if you've got somebody already coming into you, you've got that rapport, you've got that relationship already where they trust you and they're comfortable with you. Because the other thing with the stores, and I don't want to sound like I'm just constantly dissing stores, because some of them do it well, but a lot of people find it really intimidating to go into a whether it's a department store or somewhere where they're behind a curtain and everybody can hear what's going on.
Yeah, of course.
That's not a safe space for people.
Interesting. It's giving me parallels to, like, it's not exactly the same, but it's making me think of, like, again, big stores prescribing trainers to runners, for example, and it's based on outdated theories, and the runners don't know any better. So they're coming out with this shoe that they think is going to change their lives, which maybe they're in pain, or maybe they've gone in there thinking I need some professional help, which could be the same with support management for breasts and stuff like that. It could be the same thing. They could be hurting and thinking this is going to solve their solutions. And then they're walking out and then putting up with thinking, well, this must be better for me, and actually it doesn't. So,
and because I've bought it in a specialist sports store or somewhere that the person has a retail experience level that is greater than my knowledge, then I'm assuming that it's right, and I'm assuming that I must put up with it. And the number of times people will say, and like there's a few clips from TV programs as well where people have said, oh, it's just part of being a woman, you just put up with it. And I'm like, no, we don't just put up with it. We need to just be ready to go, well, actually, how do we learn how to do it right?
And it is, like you say, worth pointing out that the people who are doing these fitting services, generally, I mean, there's all sorts, but generally they're doing it at the best will, and they think they're helping, and they're just following what they've been trained. And it's so you can't.
And that's exactly as I was when I was teaching PE. I taught what I was taught to teach.
Exactly.
And they have been taught to fit, and that's what they're doing, and they are doing it with the best intentions. And like I say, not everybody is doing the incorrect technique or the poor technique. But then the problem is, can you rely on that? If that person leaves, is the next person who's been trained, and there's just and it's something that women should be independent about, because you should be able to go into any shop anywhere in the world and be able to fit yourself. So it's a knowledge situation.
Definitely. Let's have a look. Some of the guests, they are guests as well. People have joined us live. Some of our live listening guests are sharing their experiences. I'm going to put some up here as well. Nikki Mansfield says, "I love this woman already." There you go, to start the comments. I'm not sure what she was referring to there. Cecily Hislop says, "Oh, the joys of playing rugby with boobs. One bra, taping, then second bra." So yeah, we can come back to that in a second with a sporting environment. But Nikki Mansfield has shared some information as well. "I walked out of my first decent bra fitting, a chest size down, 3 cup sizes up, feeling like I was now a fully grown woman rather than a kid dressing up in grown-up clothes. Revolutionary." We've got Cecily Hislop has come back and saying, let's just bring this up on the screen for you people joining us. Nikki, finding the right bra is like finding the perfect pair of slippers. Nice. And then ARC Massage Therapy, whose name escapes me. I'm sorry. Remind me, ARC Massage Therapy, who you are. I have asked you before. I'm sorry. He says, "I'm having flashbacks of my days as a competition swimmer and the poor design and lack of support from swimsuits."
Oh,
So
that's it. Swimsuits are
rife. And Tracy here has said, "I'm just going to get a few of these out. I have a great local independent laundry shop and I've recommended them to several clients. Unfortunately, people are put off by the cost, which is much more than department stores." Interesting one. So swings and roundabouts. You get a better service, but they charge more. And then finally, just of the comments, Cecily Hislop says, "Having recently lost a significant amount of weight, I've had to be resized. 3 different sizes from 3 different stores. But for me, I won't name them out publicly, but it's on the screen. Other stores are available, proved to be the best." So yeah, it could vary from branch to branch as well, unless they do kind of house training. So yeah, I mean, I suppose you're more than familiar with those sort of comments from the people you see on a daily basis.
Yeah, and there's a couple of interesting things that have been raised there, which is fit is very individual to a particular product, right? So, and in the same way as we could compare with shoes again, couldn't we? So a particular pair of trainers, somebody might not be a size 6 in one manufacturer, they might be 6.5 in the other manufacturer, they might be 5.5 in the other manufacturer. So you get that all the time with bras. You get it with daywear bras and you get it with sports bras. So the only time that somebody can guarantee that they are the same size in the same bra is if they buy the same bra again. So even within the brands, within stores, they will be different sizes because they use different the cup style changes, and the cup style therefore changes the band fitting, if you like. So you might need to go up in a cup because it's a plunge, because there's less coverage, or you might need to go down in a cup because it's a full cup or it's padded. So again, there's no guarantee, and it's an interesting thing that, you know, there are people who may have been told somewhere in their lives that they were I'm going to throw out 36B because that's what so many people were told, and they were all buying that, me included, because that's what the shops were selling, right? So that there are people who will have worn that all their lives, despite the fact that over the course of their lives, and that's what's behind me there, and that blue pull-up banner there, is that the breasts change over the course of a woman's lifespan. And so if they're changing, and if we know how to respond to them changing, then we can look after our breasts right through our lives, as opposed to wearing a 36B and ending up like Beyonce, where the flipping wire comes out and pokes you in the middle of your boob. It's like, how would anybody think that that's reasonable? It's not reasonable. So
I think I remembered you saying, I think it was on Jack's podcast, and it was interesting as well that, and I've lived with women. I'm a man of the world, more than one, not at the same time, but I'm familiar with this concept that a woman gets home and it's take the bra off to feel comfortable. And I was interesting because I think you alluded to the idea that a lot of women do that, thinking it's just a natural thing to do, that a bra should feel uncomfortable during the day just because it's what it does, and you take it off and you feel free. But in theory, if people are doing that, is it maybe that the bra's not fitting correctly then?
It is 100% that the bra's not fitting.
Oh, really? 100%?
Yes,
gosh.
Absolutely. That is exactly the reason. If somebody is uncomfortable enough that they want to take it off, it's a poor fit. And I mean, I have the opposite. I have people who will end up wearing something that they've talked about it feeling like a second skin. We had somebody the other day, and she said she didn't remember she was wearing one, like in the time that she had it on, and we were talking to her about various different things. And when it was a wired bra and she wasn't used to wired bras, and I said to her, how are you feeling about the wired bra now? And she was like, I don't even know I've got it on. And like, I'll go to bed at night sometimes and I'll be lying in bed and I'm like, oh, I've still got it on. I need to go and take it off, because I've just literally forgotten to take it off because it's that comfortable. And I think it's really, really important that people understand that support and comfort are not mutually exclusive. You can have both. There is this feeling that people, to be comfortable, it isn't supportive, and that's not necessarily the case. The other thing is, on that note, a lot of people, particularly with sports bras, and I think Cecily mentioned it about wearing two bras, like a lot of women will end up wearing two bras because they haven't got the right fitting one sports bra, but they'll wear two or maybe even three or bind or whatever to just try and strap the girls down so that they can get on with doing whatever exercise they're doing. And that's not comfortable, and it's also going to affect breathing mechanics. So that's another area where, you know, we're not giving women the opportunity to be maximally functionally proficient and comfortable at the same time.
That's an interesting point you raised, actually, which I wanted to talk about, because aside from the potential overload on muscles and posture and that, you just mentioned like the respiratory effect on systems. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because that's something which people don't think about, is it?
Yeah, and I think, and I won't go wildly on this because I do get a bit vexed, but all the conversation that happened that was discouraging therapists from talking to people about posture were based on a study about posture and low back pain, which was done on adolescents, which is, you know, a situation where you're not talking about a population cohort that is representative of everybody, obviously, because adolescents and adults are very different in terms of their body functions and structure. But the thing that's frustrating for me is that you can do some very, very basic, simple things, like you sit in a position where you are in a flexed, rounded position, and you take a deep breath and you let it out, and then you come up into a more thoracically extended position and you take a deep breath and you let it out, and you're going to get more air in. It's that simple. So I don't think it's right for us to be saying to people, it's fine for you to spend hours like this. And we're not saying it's fine to spend hours like anything, because the point is keep moving, keep changing your position. But equally, some people can't. Some people are sitting in front of a laptop for 8 hours in the day and they can't change their position. They might be able to get up and go and make a coffee, or they might be able to go, you know, get up to go to the loo or whatever, but they're still going to come back and sit in a chair, and potentially then the amount of movement that they can make from here usually ends up coming down to here. So then in this position, they're taking in less breath, they're affecting their pelvic floor, they're affecting the absorption through, you know, the mobility of their thoracic spine, which is going to affect the absorption through their pelvic floor. So there are consequences in function, in respiratory, in pelvic floor, in musculoskeletal, in all sorts of areas that are really important for function. So even if we don't talk about pain at all, we talk purely about those functional situations, then you go to your, how is that going to affect somebody socially? So if somebody is wanting to go out and to exercise, but they're struggling to breathe, they're struggling to get more of the air that they need because their activity is demanding more, then some of that may be simply down to the fact that they are in a very flexed position. And then obviously the more flexed they are, the harder it is to become more extended, because what happens, you get weaker in your posterior chain. So then you have to work your posterior chain to come back. So it's a real catch-22. And the more your breast weight gives to gravity, the more it takes somebody into a more flexed position, the harder it is to come back out of it. So that then does begin to have functional sequelae, as opposed to just thinking about it from a pain perspective. And that same, you know, if we're then talking about, okay, so let's say somebody decides that they're going to go and they're going to start running, or, you know, do couch 5K or whatever, but then their breasts are moving around. So then they're embarrassed by it. So then they're like, oh, I'm not going to go out, or I'm going to go out after dark. And how safe is that? I knew somebody who used to wear a 𝐒𝐲𝐸. No matter what the weather was, she wore a 𝐒𝐲𝐸 because she didn't want anybody, because she would just get catcalled. So she'd get harassment on the road because somebody would be able to see her breasts moving. And that's the people who are still going out. There's a lot of people who do the couch bit because they don't want to be embarrassed by the fact that their breasts are moving. Or they'll do, they'll hold on to their breasts as they're moving. And then that changes their thoracic rotation. So then their thoracic rotation is limited. So that's then going to affect their pelvic floor. So, there's lots of knock-ons.
Most definitely. Yeah, I mean, I will get to your questions. There's some great questions that are coming through. I think because we spent a lot of time in these 227 episodes, not directly, but kind of a lot of the time with regards to posture, the rather antiquated idea that we're supposed to look like the photo on our clinic wall with our palms facing forwards and with plumb lines and things. I think we've moved on from that. But yet, like you say, this pendulum has swung a little bit too far, because when no one's really saying, I mean, they used to once upon a time with like the Kendall posture classification, and people are assuming that just because you've got maybe a little bit more of a curve in your lower spine, and therefore that's the cause of your back pain. And that can be really significant because you can ignore lower hanging fruit and other stuff. But I think with regards to a dynamic posture, like you say, with regards to breathing and stuff, it is dangerous to totally get too obsessed with this idea that there's no such thing as bad posture, because no one really said that. It's just a misinterpretation, isn't it, of just evolution. And
yeah, and I mean, it's not about, and it's an interesting thing. Like I always think patients are the people we should be listening to. Patients will talk about, they will say words like, oh, my posture is terrible, or I have bad posture, I have poor posture. They are placing these judgments. We're like, I would be encouraging somebody to be talking about aligned or upright, or when we're talking about thoracic extension, and I talk a lot about the concept of being stacked, so that we've got head over ribs, ribs over pelvis, pelvis over the the knees and the ankles, and that's your ideal plumb line. And if your ideal plumb line is something that you are gone a million miles away from, then you're potentially putting yourself into an injurious position. So to say that somebody who holds their head here all their lives, or for a long period of their lives, they're limiting their range. So they cannot rotate to the same extent as if their head is back here. So why are we accepting that that's okay? And I think that's where I think we've gone to the point of, we don't need to try and force somebody into one static position and say that this is perfect and you should be here all day. But equally, if somebody has gone away from the most functional situation, then I think we should be encouraging them to come back, to at least know how to come back towards it, so that then they have the choice. This is one of my absolute winds me up pictures.
Why are these images always women?
So like there's this acceptance. There's an acceptance that women are going to get smaller as we get older. Why? So why is it accepted? First off, it's accepted because it's happened. So it's like, it's happened, therefore it's presumed to be normal. And because it's presumed to be normal, it's therefore presumed to be inevitable. But you have plenty, so I'll come back to the why is it always women, but you have plenty of women who don't end up looking like that one at the end of their lives, because they have spent their lives going into thoracic extension. And with the advent now of a lot more people doing the likes of Pilates and yoga type activities, and a lot more weight training, which is brilliant to see that there's a lot more of that happening, there's going to be a lot less of that going on. So I think we're going to see less of this kind of shrinking thing. And I fully accept that there are hormonal changes around menopause, and that affects the vertebral column. I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, look at your 85-year-old Pilates instructor. Look at your 80-year-old yoga instructor. They are not bent over, and they haven't accepted that as being inevitable. So I think what we've missed out on is the fact that women have a greater tendency into flexion, because we have three weights pulling us forward into flexion. We have our head, and we have If you've got both breasts, you've got, so basically you've got 3 weights pulling you forward. So ironically, well, not ironically, that's the wrong word. We have to work harder to come up into extension. And the ironic bit is we're still not encouraging girls to do the likes of activities that will strengthen their upper backs when they're kids. So they're still not being encouraged to climb trees. I mean, there's councils now that are stopping people from climbing trees, which is just outrageous. So we need to start early so that the girls get strong enough to be able to tolerate breast weight when it happens, so that it doesn't pull them forward, so that they don't end up heading for there, upside down. I can't do this mirror.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's fine. That's okay. If you listen to the podcast and wondering what is being shown on the screen, then we've got that typical kind of like kyphosis position of an older lady as she's flexed forwards, and how that's accepted as the norm. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think the secret is not necessarily, because I don't want to be responsible for. The trouble is, therapists have been taught if somebody walks in that posture, then using this amazing myofascial release and stuff, they're going to bend that person back into how they should be, and they're going to walk out of clinic. And yeah, that person's probably in a lot of cases going to be in less pain, because you could do anything to them. You could stimulate their nervous system. You could hit them with a wet kipper for 20 times. As long as they believe that's going to be better, then they'll probably be less painful. But that's not the way to change someone's posture. It's the activity, like you said, it's getting them to move and experiment and keep that enjoyment of moving. I think that picture you've shown of the woman slumped over like that, it may be the case of as women get older, there's less inclusivity to include them in sports. There's more embarrassment. There's more social expectation for them to stay at home and wash up for their husband and be over the sink and that sort of stuff. It's probably to do with that.
There definitely is an element of that, and there's an element of socialization amongst that as well, in the sense of, how many women who have families will be making the time for themselves to exercise and for themselves to come into, to change the position that they're in for the rest of their lives. So excuse me. So there certainly is that side of it, for sure. But I think, to your point about the anterior tightness, if you are in a flexed position for a lot of time, then we adapt to the position that we're in. So there is going to be some anterior tightness. There's going to be some posterior weakness. And unless we do something to change that, and we can do that by just lifting your chest 100 times a day. It doesn't have to be that you need to be loosened off. There's probably going to be a lot of benefit to that if you're then maintaining that activity by repeatedly coming into a more open position. I'm not saying you have to stay in that open position, but you learn to do it and you strengthen as you're doing that. So you strengthen at the back and you lengthen at the front. And then that way you're controlling that, situation. I don't know if you know Michael O'Reilly, but Michael has a great analogy of a filing cabinet, and he talks about ratchets and wedges, and the ratchets of the anterior chain, and the fact that the posterior chain is being pushed into that position, which is actually making the ratchets tighter. So just getting that whole, it's not enough to just loosen the tight bit. We've got to re-establish the balance. We've got to get the filing cabinet, not tipping forward in order to get that. And then once you've got that, you've got options. You've got, it's your choice whether you choose to keep it or not. It's your choice whether you kind of, life doesn't allow that to happen or whatever. But I think as long as we are allowing ourselves through blissful ignorance to get into positions that can be ultimately injurious, then that blissful ignorance it's kind of like it is no defense in the sense of we should be educating people out of those situations.
Great stuff. Yes, definitely. Right now, people, sorry, I've left you a little questions unanswered. There's a great question here from Tracy Marsh. Okay. How do you manage with different breast sizes, left and right? Accommodate the larger side? Question mark. Yeah.
And so as with most parts of the body, so there's some asymmetry on all legs, hands, feet, the works, isn't there? The vast majority of breasts are one size is bigger than the other, and women don't know this. And there are changes, as we talked about, or mentioned, over life cycles. So, for example, the breast weight changes over the menstrual cycle. So it may get bigger. Well, it will get bigger towards somebody having their period, and then it gets a little bit smaller. So if you've got an asymmetry, that asymmetry can become more well, if I say more of a problem, if your bra doesn't fit you, then and your breasts are getting bigger, then it may be that larger size needs a cup size up because it doesn't fit you in the first place. But yes, you always accommodate to the larger size. And one of the things that we do is we teach people how to adjust their bra to work around their breast shape. Because when I started this, I was all about support. I was a bit like comfort. I was like, it doesn't matter whether you're comfortable or not, you just need to be supported. And then, of course, I realized, well, nobody's going to wear it if it's not comfortable. So that's not going to, that's the pendulum going to the other side, So you can get comfort and support, but within that requirement, shape is very much what dictates a lot of comfort. So the breast shape, and if the breast shape and the bra cup are not congruent, then sometimes people won't be comfortable. So it's not just about getting a bra that fits, it's about also getting a style that suits. So with a breast asymmetry, there are some styles that work better for a breast asymmetry than others. But then we teach people how to do things like adjust the straps so that you're accommodating for that, as opposed to most lingerie adverts that you'll see, their straps will be in exactly the same position because nobody has actually looked at them and gone, well, actually that, and then you look at them from the front and I'll see an asymmetry. I'll see a very clear asymmetry. But that gets kind of, again, marketed as cleavage. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. And again, I mean, I'm sorry to turn breasts into feet, but not my intention. But the same with shoes. A lot of people need to lace one shoe up slightly different than the other to accommodate the fact you've got slightly different shaped bones in the foot or slightly different width or length. So yeah, that's a very interesting point about not assuming that that's why the straps are there. That's why they work individually. There's not just one in the middle to make both straps get longer and shorter. That's a great point.
But they're also just on the straps, and because this is really important, and it is the reason why so many women end up also in pain and with train tracks down their shoulders here, is because when somebody's in the wrong bra, they are relying on the straps to try and hold these weights up against gravity. I don't know if you know about Hooke's law, but Hooke's law is basically if you hang a weight onto the end of a structure, that structure will eventually get stretched out by the weight. And that's exactly what gravity does. So our breasts go southeast and southwest. So they go into what I like to call dipped headlights. And that's because the only thing supporting them is the skin. So the skin is going to stretch unless we support them externally through a well-fitting bra and internally through our torso position. So when we change our torso position, the breast position doesn't change on the chest wall. That's what the external support does. But what happens is the breast position changes relative to the floor with the internal. So we get dipped headlights to full beam with each of those, with an internal and with an external. But when we do them both together, we get high beam. So we go from dipped headlights to full beam to high beam. And if we're at high beam, gravity's got a lot less impact. I'm all about high beam.
About the high beam. We should we should let people know, especially somehow it's 10 to 9 now already. And I know you've got to get away sharpish because you're teaching after this. Courses, you run CPD courses. Let's bring a little bit up on the screen for people who want to know, because as you've highlighted now, this is an area of education. And one way that I guess any of our listeners can help their clients, 50% at least of who are going to be women, and some of them, as you've suggested, this could be a significant issue with either their sports or just everyday life, signposting and everything. But to do this properly and accurately, the idea would be they need some education. So this is the sort of thing you offer, yes, with your courses. I'm just going to bring one up on the screen here so people can see it. Everything we're talking about here is available to read at posturefittingphysio.com. Let's bring that up on the screen. Talk us through one of the courses then you run and the sort of people you see coming on it, if you'd be so kind.
So when I first set up, so basically I set up the service for my patients and realized how effective it was and impactful it was for them to get the education in how to support their own breast weight. And then I kind of thought, well, this is great, but I can't keep this just for the women of Cork. Need to make sure that this is kind of getting out into the world more. So then I set up a training course and I called it Gals Against Gravity. And it's still called Gals Against Gravity. And my initial thought was that it would just be for therapists and maybe exercise professionals, and they would be the people who would be most interested in it. But now what I've realized is that it's a very narrative course, because it talks mostly about the breast side. And therefore it is something that a lot of people who have not necessarily had a healthcare background, but they've found it really useful, because they've learned about the statistics, they've learned about, the impact, the number of different areas that it impacts. They've learned the likes of, it isn't all about larger breasted, because that's another real fallacy. People think, oh, well, I'm small, I've got nothing, it doesn't matter. Anything is a weight going forward. So, it is about, as you've just said, it's about signposting. And they will have, the therapists generally will have 50% at least of their patients will be female. And there is, we have evidence showing that women get more low back pain and more mid back pain and more neck pain than men. And in all of the research, they've given lots of reasons. Nobody's gone, oh, there's 2 elephants in the room there. Nobody's mentioned them at all. So, I think to have anybody who works with women and girls to be in a situation where they understand this and they're aware of it, to then be able to signpost onwards is really, really important. So I've extended the kind of opening of the Gals Against Gravity basically to anybody who's interested, and anybody who's got the opportunity to signpost. And then following that, if it's something that people are interested in or works in terms of their location or whatever, then there's training onwards to become a posture fitting partner, which is then offering the actual service. And as things stand right now, to offer the service, you need to have a selection of bras. I've just created 2 different levels within that, so that the amount of actual stock that's needed for it is a little bit less. But speaking of stock, I'm sorry for jumping. Who was it? Nikki, I think, mentioned about how, that she has a really good independent store, but that a lot of there's a cost associated. I feel, and this is purely a me opinion, I would prefer somebody to be in a well-fitting but perhaps poorer quality bra than to be in a than to be in a poorly fitting expensive bra. So once somebody has learned how to fit themselves, then they have the option, because they know how to do it. There are plenty of decent quality bras at better prices. It's not all about paying, like I've seen bras that cost €100, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good one. It's just in an environment where that's what the brand and the name and all that. But you can go into a large department store where there's lots of, kind of the self-branded stuff. And once you've learned how to do it yourself, then you do learn. Like cotton isn't a great product from a fabric perspective, because it's going to stretch. So once you have that information, then you can choose. I'm all about informed choice.
Amazing. Right. So yeah, and although on the screen it said it was connected for physios, it's not just for physios at all. Like you said, it's for anybody who would be interested, in learning more about this. And you mentioned, it's the Gals Against Gravity community, which is talked about on your website as well, posturefittingphysio.com. And then if they are interested in that, then there is the CPD course they can do as well. With the idea that, I think at the moment as it stands, I think we were mentioned off air that you need to be degree level to do that course. Is it at the moment?
Yeah.
But that's setting you up with the tools and the scope of practice to be able to do what in clinic? Is it just a signpost, or is it to be involved in fitting as well?
So if the second level, so the next level of training beyond the Gals Against Gravity, that is, I've now kind of done 3 different levels of that. But the idea with that is to be able to provide the service of teaching somebody how to be able to fit themselves, possibly with stock that they can purchase if they so choose.
Okay.
But definitely to be able to then, that they could, the stock can be sent to a therapist, and they can fit it on the person there rather than hold it in stock. But the idea is to be able to give somebody the the capacity, the independence
that's
to
great.
be able to do it themselves. Yeah.
So it's not at all just about supplying the bra, it's about having that conversations, listening, and then, as always, let's do the subjective as well, and listening to the reasons why they might be more suited towards something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I mean, one of
huge.
the things that, it's an interesting thing is there's an assumption when people have heard that we're doing this. Like, I get emails all the time from people saying, I'd like to book in for a bra fitting. And so we will always have a conversation to say, it's not just a bra fitting. There's a lot more to it than a bra fitting. But therefore, as a result of there being a lot more to it, this is what you will gain. You're going to learn more than just how to fit a bra. You're going to learn how to manage your breast weight, which is very different. But again, what people know in terms of managing breast weight, people only know about bras. They don't know about anything else. So that's part of the education. And I will always say to somebody, there's no obligation to buy a bra, and there's no guarantee that the bras that we have are going to be right for people, because, like I said, different shapes. What we have day wear and we have sports, but that still doesn't mean that somebody is going to find their perfect fit. But what they have when they walk out the door is the knowledge to go and find it, and we will signpost them if what we have doesn't work for them, or if they don't like it, and that's fine too.
Amazing. Well, definitely something which I think hopefully some of our listeners will be interested in. And as you say, all details of that are available on posturefittingphysio.com. You can also follow Siobhan and contact on Facebook, Posture Fitting, and also LinkedIn as Siobhan O'Donovan. And if you're listening to the podcast and you've got further questions, don't forget to use YouTube. Write in the comments there, and I monitor them, and we'll make sure if there's any questions we can't answer, then we'll forward them on to Siobhan as well. So keep the conversation going alive, even though it's just this episode. We'd love to have you back as well. I mean, there's so many more questions I wanted to ask you about. Cecily's asked about exercises and things, which we're not going to get into now because it's 8:57. I know you've got to go. So thank you, Siobhan. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an amazing opening and exactly what I wanted for the opening of the Women's Health, because once again, it's things which we don't know about or understand until someone like yourself tells us. It's just coins suddenly drop. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. And it is very much, that's kind of my goal is really to just open people's eyes to it, because it's a problem that's hidden in plain sight. We've allowed it to be hidden in plain sight because nobody has actually pointed our eyes to it. So, and it is one of those things that women have put up with and they don't need to put up with.
Amazing. Just one other question from Nikki, and then you've really got to go. Does the course include a range of exercises to improve, say, thoracic position and ROM?
We will talk about exercises within that, but to be honest, I'm a big exercise fan, and there's a role for that. A lot of what we do is more about using little and often, so cues and positions on a regular basis. So, a little and often situation as opposed to going to the gym to do X, Y, or Z exercises. But having said that, there is a place for that as well. So
amazing.
A bit of both.
Right, Siobhan, you should go. I'm going to just wrap up here. I'm going to let you go now because I know you've got things to do, and then I'll wrap up and let people know what's coming next week. But thank you so much, Siobhan. I'm looking forward to staying in contact and have you back at some point, because there's so much more we could talk about. Such an interesting topic and important.
Very happy to. I can keep going on this forever. So
I know that I'll get in trouble. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll take care. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Right then, that is Siobhan going on to spread the good word and teach. So thank you, people, for joining us. Really great questions. I'm sorry I didn't manage to get to all of them. There was so much more I wanted to ask Siobhan as well. But I think, we'll ask her and try and get her back on at a later stage to talk about things. Maybe if somebody decides to join up with the Girls Against Gravity community, it'd be nice to hear from you as well and let us know a little bit about it. So thank you, people who joined us live. There's one little thing which I want to include in the podcast because it was just so interesting and we didn't have time to talk about. I was quite surprised when I was doing a little bit of breast research at the beginning of the week in preparation for this about the history of sports bras, and it did surprise me that it wasn't until 1977 that actually a sports bra was designed by, a little bit of facts for you here, people, a little bit by Lisa Lindell, Polly Smith and Hinda Scriber, and it was actually called the Jock bra. I'm going to bring it up now on the screen in case you are want to watch the YouTube version. Get ready for a run and jog bra. And it was revolutionary at the time, because until then, women would just regularly wear bras or double up on bras to support themselves whilst exercising. The original one, which is still available in the Smithsonian Natural Museum of American History, was actually called the jock bra. And the reason why it was called the jock bra was it was actually devised, the prototype was devised by just putting two jock straps together, which I thought was testimony to the lack of information and tools for actually designing something for women. You've got something called a jock strap and put them together and create a bra. But I thought that was quite interesting. And the images on the screen of the prototype there, you can see how basic it was. But yeah, 1977 was the first time that suddenly they started thinking maybe women are different than men and need something special to support the upper body, which I thought was fascinating anyway. So I wanted to share that for the podcast to make sure it is on there. And also to let you know about next week, which is going to be part 2 of our focus on women's health. So next week, which will be recorded live on the 4+7, 11th of February 2025. My guests are going to be Christian Bird and Joe McEwen from Menopause Movement, who, again, those of you who went to Therapy Expo may be aware of. And they are going to be talking about menopause, bone health, and muscle mass. So that's going to be, again, anybody who knows Christine and Joe are going to be big fans anyway, but they've been on the show before. And it's going to be, focusing on the menopause, which is a topic which so many of our listeners again and again ask for, not just female, but also male therapists as well. Because again, it's something which you're going to have to deal with and look out for. The changes it can make to the idea of what's going on with relation to MSK issues are huge. Things like tendinopathy, and also bone health. So it's going to be a great episode. Really looking forward to having you along. So if you are listening to this podcast and you do like the idea of joining us live to get some questions in and just hang out with like-minded therapists, then join us 8 o'clock on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. We do also stream live to Facebook. I kind of rate YouTube a little bit more just because it's going to be there for longer and your comments will show up and people will be able to add to it. Facebook just disappears. As we talked about in the last focus on business last month, you're better off using YouTube a lot of the time if you're looking for material that's going to have a shelf life. Facebook, you post it and it's gone. Google doesn't pick up on it. It's just disappeared. Whereas YouTube, it's there and it will appear in Google searches forever, because YouTube and Google are one. So there you go. Thank you everybody again for joining us live. Really appreciate it, especially with a topic like this. It's really, really useful to have people here talking about their own experiences. So thank you very much for sharing that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I hopefully see some of you next week on the Sports Therapy Association podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.